Hello, welcome along to the Creative Faculty Skills videos. Today I'm going to be teaching you about knife skills, how to stay safe, how to chop things in the correct way for certain dishes that you want to cook. Now, obviously I'm at home, you're at home as well, so things are a little different to normal than if we were in school. But I'll try and give some tips that will work for both. So first thing I want to talk to you about is safety. Now, if you are going to be using a knife at home, it's best to be supervised when you're doing this. Obviously, knives can be quite dangerous. But also, I'm going to be setting up some criteria that you can be assessed on by whoever it is that's supervising you. So I'll give a little checklist that you can be marked on, essentially, by your parents or whoever is around to watch, so that you're using good technique and that you're doing all the things that we've taught in this video correctly. Okay, so first things first, as always in the kitchen, it's most important to get the hygiene elements right. So first thing you've got to do, if you've got long hair, tie that back. If you have an apron, then you've got your apron on, so wash your hands. Now, at school we often use a knife that's about this size. We also have some that are a little bit bigger, this sort of size, and I'm going to use both of these today, but my preference at home is this one. This is a really nice knife, and one of the first things that you need to have is a sharp knife. Now, it might seem like the opposite of what you would imagine, but having a sharp knife is actually safer when you're when you're chopping things in the kitchen, because if you have a blunt knife, then what you end up doing is trying to force the blade through the vegetable or the piece of fruit or whatever it is you're cutting. And if you're forcing it, then you're out of control and it can slip and it can cut you. Now, what you really want to have is a sharp knife so that you can have really easy, controlled cutting motion. Okay, so you're not having to force anything and you can stay nice and safe as you do that. So you've got your hands washed, you've got your apron on, you've got your hair tied back, we're ready to start. If you have a bench, if you have a chopping board at home, which has a tendency to slide around, what is a good idea is to get a tea towel and to make it slightly damp, and then lay that down underneath your chopping board on the work surface, and that means that it won't slip around. Moving on to the techniques. So the first technique that I want to show you today is called the bridge technique. Now, essentially what you're going to do is you're going to turn your hand into a bridge, and you're going to hold the food at each end of that bridge, and then you're going to use your knife in what would be, I guess, the river, and you're going to chop. Now, if you see, it's going to be something like this. So there's nothing that's underneath the knife that belongs to my body, which I'm going to be able to cut there. So that's quite a good way of chopping things. So that's the first technique, and I'll show you that with different vegetables in a little while. The second technique is called claw. Now, what that implies is something like this, like a claw of an animal. And the way that you set that up is you get your vegetable and you put your middle finger on there, you put your first finger behind that one, and your third finger behind that, and you create this sort of claw, and you tuck your nail in, so you've got this knuckle which is standing out a little bit. Now, if I show you that from the side there, what happens then is that your knife runs the blade of your knife, not the cutting point of the knife, but the side of the blade, which can't cut you, runs along that knuckle, and so you can move your knife. Now, when I'm moving this, I'm not doing this. I'm actually rolling the knife along the surface. So that adds to control, the way you control things. So we're now going to move on and talk about chopping different vegetables. And so today I'm going to use a few different things. We're going to do a carrot, a piece of garlic, we're going to do pepper, and we're going to do an onion. Okay, now let's start with the onion. The onion, it's got this brown papery skin on the outside, this is the root end here. You see the roots sticking out, and this is the top end, so the neck. Now, I have used different ways of cutting onions over the years, but the one that I've settled on reasonably recently works pretty well for me. And so what we're going to do first of all is you're going to use your bridge technique. So I've got my bridge set up there, and I'm going to cut. Now, if you imagine this being like a planet, this would be the equator, right? But I'm going to not cut through the equator. I'm going to go the other way. Okay, I'm going to go sort of from the North Pole to the South Pole, if you like, and I'm going to cut right through the middle like that. To get the two halves of the onion. Then you take the top. Like that. Now, what we're left with is the root at the bottom. That keeps everything together. The onion is made up of layers, and what we want when we're cutting is for this to stay together. Okay. Now, in order to remove the skin, what you can do is you can either just carefully peel back the first skin layer, or you can get underneath that first layer of onion. The green outer part is a little bit more bitter and strong flavoured than the rest. So if you peel that off, take that out of the way, and you're left with your onion like this. Okay, now I'm going to do these two halves of onion in different ways. Different recipes call for an onion to be sliced, and some call for an onion to be diced. Okay, so I'm going to start with slicing. It's the sort of simplest one, and then I'll do dicing after. So to make a slice in this onion, I'm going to use my claw technique. So middle finger on, first finger behind that, third finger behind that, and we're going to rest and cut through. Now that is what you would call a slice of the onion. It's quite thin. Now, if you've got a blunt knife, this really shows up because it's very difficult and it slides. It tries to slide off the skin of this onion. But if you've got a lovely sharp knife, then it will go through really easily, and you can actually get super thin slices of onion. Okay. Now, where it gets quite tricky is when you get towards the end here, and you're left with this piece which wants to start, either the layers of the onion start to slide off, or it starts to go wrong. Now what you can do is you can back up a little bit, and you can change from a claw hold back to the bridge. So you can use your first pieces of onion that you've already cut to support that, and you can cut through there, and you're left with that little piece of root which you don't want, so you can get rid of that. Now, my eyes have started to go. If you're chopping onions, obviously what happens when you chop it is that the vapour rises up from the onion, and it can start to make your eyes water. Now, different people do different things. There's lots of ways of doing it. If you give a little waft, the vapour is taken away, and that can help quite a lot. That's generally all I ever do. If you try to stand back a little bit and let the vapour rise up in front of you, that can also help. Some people put on goggles, safety goggles, and all sorts of things. But generally, if you give it a little waft, that gets rid of the vapour, and you're good to go. So that is sliced onion. Now the next way that I'm going to do this, just move them off to the side. I'm going to take the other half of the onion and I'm going to dice it. Now we do a similar thing. Just going to peel off the top layer of that onion. Try and keep a clean chopping board as much as you can. It makes things a lot easier. Now, with this one, I'm going to use my bridge hold to begin with, and I'm going to slice down through the onion from the North Pole to the South Pole, if you like, or south to north, whichever way. But I'm not going all the way through. I'm leaving a section here. So I'm cutting all the way through to the bottom under there, but I'm not cutting right through to the South Pole, if you like. So I'll cut through all the way there. It's still holding together because I've got this root section on. Now the next bit I'm going to do is a little bit tricky. I'm going to cut there. I'm probably going to do only 2 cuts there. Now it's starting to try and separate all over the place, but luckily I've still got this root holding it together. Now I'm going to do essentially what I did with the first half of the onion, which was slicing it. So we get our claw hold again, and you're going to start to chop down through this way. Now because we've cut it all the other different ways, what we're left with are these little chunks, and that's a diced onion. That's a really nice fine diced onion. So chopping through here, what you might find is you get little tails coming out of the edge there. Just be careful of this thumb, that it doesn't trail outside the claw hold. Now you don't have the luxury of having those extra bits of onion there this time when you're doing this. So when you get to this point, what I often do is I'm left with this. I don't want to waste this onion, so I just start to chop round the root here like that. My camera's disintegrating, and there you go, you're left with that part which you don't want. So these pieces, lovely diced onion. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to show you how to prepare is garlic. Now this is a bulb of garlic, okay, and we want the cloves which are inside there. So you need to be able to get in to that, and the way that you do it, it's not very subtle, but you put your hand on top and you give it a whack like that, and that separates all the cloves. So you can now see that we've got these individual bits. I'm going to pick a nice big fat one like that, and I'm going to show you how to arrange this. Now you have, much like the onion, you've got this papery skin on the outside, and we need to get rid of that. Now peeling that off is a pain, takes a long time, so we're going to use a little technique which involves using a knife, quite a wide bladed knife. If you can do it with the smaller one too. We're going to put that on top, we're going to lay it on the bench, and we're going to use it as a lever, and we're going to crush that garlic. Now we're not going to crush it to bits, we're just going to do it till it's sort of, you can hear it crunch a little bit. So we're trying to stay away from the sharp edge. We're putting that on top, and we're going to crush it down like that. Okay, at that point the skin becomes much easier to peel off. It comes away like that. Okay, now like the onion, we've got this top end which keeps it all together, so I'm not going to do anything with that. We're going to chop this. I'm going to actually dice this. You can do slices like the onion, in which case you would just slice through like that, really fine slices, or you can dice it. So I'm going to dice this one. I'm going to chop down through that direction. I might chop in this way as well, and I'm going to chop through and finally dice it like that. Now you're left with that little root piece. We're going to get rid of that, and then if you want, you can take these small pieces of garlic and you can just chop them up. Now I'm not even using my other hand here, I'm just taking these into position, I'm just rolling my knife over it, and I'm chopping them up nice and fine. By the way, you can use a garlic crusher for this, but I like to actually dice it because I feel like you waste quite a lot of the garlic when you do it. So I'm taking the garlic off the side of my blade because I'm not touching the actual cutting part. I'm just rolling that over, slicing it up, very fine diced garlic. There you go. Okay, the next thing I'm going to show you how to prepare is a pepper. Now I've done this different ways over the years. Recently I saw Gordon Ramsay doing it the way that I'm going to show you today, and if it's good enough for him, it's good enough for me. So this is, the pepper's got this side which connects to the stem, and I'm going to first of all cut that off so we've got a flat surface to work on. He also cuts off this end piece, so he's got two flat ends. You could do that if you want. Now, what is inside here? Lots of seeds. We don't want these seeds, okay? And what we also don't want is the white material which is inside. It's called pith. Pith. So what we're going to do is slice down through there, and we've got none of that pith on there. It's all left in here. See all that in there? That's very bitter. It's not very nice to eat. So you take that out, you've got that lovely slice there. Cut down through here. Cut down through there. And you've got another little bit you can use there. And maybe a bit there. Okay. So I'm going to get all that there. It's pretty much wasted. It's very bitter, or you've got the seeds. Now, depending on what you want to do with the pepper, if you're using a stir fry, you might do long strips like this, batons, or even thinner for julienne for a stir fry maybe, or you can dice it. So again, we slice it using the claw technique, and then what I'll do is I'll line these up like that, and I'll cut across in the other direction. You get nice finely diced pepper. So the two ways of doing that we've got there. Okay, the last thing I'm going to show you how to prepare the knife skills is a carrot. And I've got two peelers at home, two different types of peelers. Different vegetables I use it in different ways. I mean, if you've got either one of these, they'll work for everything really. But I prefer this one for potatoes, because I pull it towards myself. So if I was doing a carrot, I'd pull it towards myself like that, using my thumb as to lever it. But personally, I prefer to use this one on the carrot like this. Now, the top and the tail of the carrot. Actually, that's the top, that's the tail. We don't really want to take off at this stage because it's a bit more to hold on to. We'll take them off before we cook them. So I'm holding on to these. Now, peelers are a cutting implement just like a knife. You can end up peeling yourself by accident. Just trim off those ends. Like that. Now that we've peeled off our skin, we can top and tail a carrot. So we're chopping off the top, and we're ready now to prepare it in different ways. Now there's different ways to do a carrot. So a classic way to prepare one is to make rounds like this. So these are your classic carrot rounds. You can make them as thin or as thick as you want. That's the first way. The next way, there's sort of two separate things you could do. One is called julienne, and one is called making a baton. So you can, if I want to make either of these really, I'm probably going to chop this either in half or in thirds, depending on the size of your carrot. So I'm going to hold in a bridge. I'm going to chop down through there. I'm going to keep that piece there to support us, and then I'm going to do that as well. Now that's quite a tricky thing to do. You might want to chop the carrot in half to make it easier. Thirds is quite tricky, but it just means it's a little bit thinner for me. Okay, now if it's batons you're after, then you're going to slice down long ways, and you end up with something like that. Now these are good for in dips, so you could dip hummus or whatever into that. That's also quite nice in a stir fry. You might also want to make julienne, which is just a much finer version, very finely sliced. Okay, now these, if it's as finely sliced as that might go in a salad. It could also go in a stir fry. It's up to you. There's sort of three separate ways of doing carrots: julienne, baton, and rounds. Okay, I could actually make these a little bit thinner, so I could take them the other way. If you're doing a stir fry, it's a combination of textures, shapes and colours that make the stir fry, and obviously flavours, but in preparing your vegetables you want a different colours. So the orange colour of the carrot's really nice, and you've got these interesting shapes, which and also you leave these quite crunchy, so it makes quite a crunchy texture that might go contrast to the soft noodles or something like that. Okay, that's your carrots done. So I hope you've enjoyed these knife skills videos. I'm going to provide online a chart for you to fill in as your observer, so you can rate the person who's using the knife. And I'd like you to send in those forms to me. You could send in pictures if you wanted, or even a little video. My email address is r.johnston@hasla.org.uk. Johnston is spelled Johnston. So that's r.johnston@hasla.org.uk. Send in your entries. That will be an automatic 25 Pride pounds for entry, and I will judge some winners, and we'll give some more Pride pounds for those. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.